Do you need attention right now? Right, do you need it right now? Can we perhaps postpone attention? Are you sad? Hi kids, welcome back to another pizza party. I'm Mrs. Pizza. This is Winnie, and she's having some sort of existential crisis right now. She looks very forlorn. And then Cheese is back in the cheese spot, always in that spot. That's Cheese's spot. And we are here today to do a recent reads. Why? Because if I wait too long, it's too many books. And so I like to do this while it's still shorter. Also, Winnie's gonna lay on the air conditioning. Perfect. Hopefully that muffles some of the sound for us because it is 1.5 million degrees outside and I can't turn the air conditioning off. So thank you, Winnie, for your contribution to this. All right, let's talk about some books. I will say, for some reason, I was on a fantasy romance, like silly fantasy romance kick. So there's a lot of that happening in this recent reads. The first book we're going to talk about was a reread for me and my final reread of this series. And that was That Time I Got Drunk and Saved a Human. And this is by Kimberly Lemming. This is the Mead Mishap series. And I've talked about this series literally in every single video I make. I find a way to bring it up. I feel like I walk down the street just waiting for an opportunity to bring this up in real life conversation. Like, excuse me, do you like to laugh, but also like spicy things? Have I got the series for you? This is a series of fantasy romance stories. In our first book, we are introduced to a very small town in this fantasy world where demons exist. Now, demons can be a multitude of things. They're not just guys with horns, although guys with horns exist also. Demons is kind of a catch-all phrase for any sort of paranormal, magical fantasy creature. In this story, in our final story so far in the series, we are following Dante, who is a demon, and he has left the small town that most of our stories begin in on a quest to find his fated mate. Everybody else is pairing up, finding love, starting super relationships, just staring at each other with hearts in their eyes, and Dante wants it to be his turn. So he's decided to travel out into the world and try and find that special someone just for him. He doesn't make it very far before he encounters a woman named Cherry who has been trapped in this tower by a dragon for a very long time now. She's just been stuck here and she's ready to get off this damn island. And so Dante shows up and he quickly realizes that he's going to take Cherry away if she needs to leave, that it's not fair that she's stuck on this island and with this tower and all these weird, I think they're like froggy-like creatures that are around that aren't very talkative. But Cherry doesn't know that Dante's willing to help, and so she decides to drug him in order to make him cooperate with getting her off the island. And then Dante is drugged and he accidentally mate bonds with Cherry. And then these two are kind of in a marriage of convenience, kind of. It's very funny. Basically, this book is these two people realizing that they're perfect for each other and having a lack of communication, but in a way that's funny because they're trying to have communication. They're just doing a terrible job at it. I usually hate miscommunication tropes in stories, but this one, it worked because the miscommunications made sense. This is funny. It's silly. I really enjoyed it. And this entire series makes me very happy if I haven't talked about it enough. The next book I picked up after that, I was still feeling I wanted silly fantasy romance. And so I turned to Cassandra Gannon. If you don't know who Cassandra Gannon is, you probably haven't been as deep in the Kindle Unlimited as I have. I've been in the trenches. But Cassandra Gannon, and I believe, I can't remember her sister's name, but there's another Gannon. They write kind of silly fantasy romance. Some of them are way out there and definitely not something that I plan on picking up. But I had heard good things about this series. This is Cassandra Gannon's kind of fairy tale series. It starts with, I can't remember the name of it. I'll put it up on the screen. Book 1 is a Little Red Riding Hood retelling, and it's the relationship between Little Red Riding Hood. Well, she's not little. She's an adult. Red Riding Hood and the Big Bad Wolf. I was told that you can kind of start the series anywhere you want, and so I decided to start with book 2. So I read The Beast in Shining Armor, and this is a Beauty and the Beast retelling. This one I liked okay. I had a good time. It gave me what I wanted. This is the story of Belle, and I'm going to call him Avenant, but I don't know exactly how you would pronounce his name. he is a king. Well, he's a prince that turns into a king. And Belle and Avenant have been adversaries. They've been rivals since the time they were itty bitty children. They've lived in this kingdom together. They went to like kindergarten together, and they've always been at odds. They always bicker. But the thing is that since Avenant is the prince, most people just let him get his way. Belle doesn't. She absolutely does not put up with his bullying. She stands up to him every chance she can get. And in the opening of this story, we have these two that are actually locked in a court battle because Belle has been named the protector / ruler of this realm when Avenant was overthrown for something that he did. But he is suing because he says it was wrongful, and it ends up causing these two and many others to enter into a competition where they have to make it through a maze, and whoever makes it through the maze wins the throne. This world is very interesting, and I actually like the lore of it. You have the good and the bad, and some people are just born good and some people are just born bad, but it's got more nuance than that. See, the bad guys aren't necessarily actually the bad guys. This world reminds me of Shrek 2. Where, stay with me, where it's like we have all these fairy tale elements, but then also people have cell phones and go through drive-thrus. Like there's also modern elements to it as well. It's this kind of mashup. And in this world, people are born bad guys or good guys, but a lot of the time the good guys are actually bad guys and the bad guys are actually good guys. It's a divide of the people. You're either good or bad, and you're born that way. But the bads realize as soon as they see their one true love, their fated mate, as we'll put it, they know exactly who they are from the moment they see them. Whereas the goods, it might take a little bit longer, is how we'll put it. And so the goods don't know from first impression who their fated mate is, but everyone in this world seems to have a one true love. That being said, I enjoyed this story, and I feel like I had a good time with it, but it wasn't great. It was good. It wasn't great. It was Beauty and the Beast. I love Beauty and the Beast retellings. I really enjoyed that while we were getting the current story of these two locked in this maze, having to work together to survive, we also get flashbacks to them when they met, when they were children. Different points in time where they were teenagers, when they were a little bit older, all these different moments that were kind of pivotal moments in the relationship between these two people. It was fun. It was silly. I enjoyed it enough to move on to our next book, which was The Kingpin of Camelot. This is the third book in the series, and this one I enjoyed the absolute heck out of. It was nice already having a little bit of the groundwork of, I know how this world works with fated mates and how these people have cell phones and TVs, but also magical talking frogs and other fairy tale accoutrement. Is that the right word? Somebody Google that word. I don't know where that came from. The Kingpin of Camelot. You don't have to read the others to read this one. And I definitely enjoyed this one. This is the story of Midas, and hello? Well, neither one of you know what you're barking at. Now you're just barking at each other. Hold on. Let me go check. Well, just as I expected. There was absolutely no reason for the barking. But thank you, everyone. In this story, we have Midas, and he is a kingpin. He is kind of what would the word be? Like a mob boss, almost. A criminal boss, a boss of the underworld. And he has the golden touch. He's a bad guy, and he was born bad. And he has worked his way from absolute poverty to the point of being the biggest and the baddest and the most powerful bad guy in all of the kingdom. And one day, during a great big party that he's kind of bored at, the queen of the realm, so Guinevere, who's married to the king of the realm, King Arthur, shows up with her child in her arms, soaking wet, and asks for Midas's help, and has this immediate, what he believes, misplaced trust, and that he's not only going to help her, but that he's misunderstood, that he's actually this sweet and caring and nice person. And he's like, no, I'm a bad guy. I do bad stuff. Like, everyone else knows this. How are you getting this wrong? Now, she's not completely naive. She just sees him in a light that no one, including himself, sees him. She thinks he's misunderstood, and she needs his help. See, Arthur passed away not too long ago, and now this character called the Scarecrow has decided to take over, and he has his sights set on getting rid of Guinevere and her child, who's the heir to the throne and has the right to claim it. So Midas is now the protector of his enemy, King Arthur's wife and child. Adventure ensues where where they're trying to figure out a way to stop the scarecrow, keep the daughter safe. Things are happening. I laughed at this one. It's hilarious. It's silly. It's funny that Guinevere looks at this big scary crime man and just basically sees a misunderstood puppy. And he's just, I guess, gonna go along with it because he knows as soon as he looks at her, something that all bads know when they see someone that is going to be their true love. This was such a good time. And it's silly. It's not high literature, but I really, really liked it. It gave me exactly what I needed. Cassandra Gannon gives you a silly good time. If you're looking for a silly good time, I'm pretty sure she's going to deliver. The next book I picked up after that was a little bit of a departure from my fantasy romance nonsense. I finished The Fellowship of the Ring, the first book in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. I actually have a bind up of all three right here. And this is like hefty. Like I could definitely protect myself. It could be used as a weapon. But this, I don't think I need to explain to you what this is. If you don't know what this is, I'm pretty sure there's entire videos on YouTube that will give you a deep dive and let you know all about this. Also, there's movies. Also, I'm pretty sure there's TV shows now too that I haven't watched. Anyways, I listened to the audiobook version of the first book in this trilogy, narrated by Andy Serkis. And I loved it. He did a phenomenal job. He played Gollum in the movie adaptation of this, and he does a phenomenal job with all the different voices and voice acting. I mean, he's a phenomenal voice actor, so obviously he would be a phenomenal audiobook narrator. And it's a story of Frodo and the Fellowship of the Ring. And them taking one ring on a journey across the country. And, you know, the friends we make along the way. It was interesting because it's been a long time since I've read these books. And I forgot Tom Bombadil existed. And there is 1,000% more Tom Bombadil in the book than there is in the movie. Also, there's a lot of singing that I'm pretty sure when I'm reading it, I just skim right over it. But Andy Serkis, he serenaded us multiple times in this book. This is a piece of fantasy classic literature, and I made it through the first book. My goal is to complete all three books again. I was trying to do it this year, but I'm slow going at this point. Next book I picked up after that was Mind in Magic, and this is the third book in the Falling for Fable series by Jenna Wolfhart. These are cozy fantasy romance stories, all taking place in the same fantasy world, but each book follows a couple like a traditional romance series would, so you can read them in whatever order you want, even though there is world building and obviously characters from books will show up in other books, and so you might be spoiled. Although I'm pretty sure if you're reading a fantasy romance, you know who the couple is, and then they're going to end up together by the end of the book. Anyways, this is the story of Astrid, and she is a dwarf. She lives in a mine, and she has spent the majority of her life looking for this magical relic that will help her undo a curse that she has. See, Astrid has a curse that she cannot ever leave the mines, and though she loves the mines, it's her home, and she loves everyone there, she yearns to be able just to travel outside of the mines and see the greater world. Well, every year the mines hold a competition. This year, the prize for winning this competition is the relic that Astrid has been looking for forever, which is very, very fortuitous. Along with Astrid and the other dwarves, people from outside travel to partake in this competition, and one of the people that has traveled this year to compete is a demon, a shadow demon, and his name is Tormund. His name is Tormund. He is after this very specific relic for very specific reasons of his own. So these two both have their own reasons to want this thing. And then, lo and behold, the magic whoozy-whatsy goes missing, and these two end up teaming up to try and figure out what happened to it. So investigating in this small, cozy place what happened to this thing. These are cozy, and that the stakes aren't crazy high-octane high. This is a little more slow-moving. There's cozy, fun characters, and even the bad guys usually aren't that bad in these stories. This one was fine. I will say a lot of the different conflicts in this story got wrapped up in incredibly convenient ways. And I'm totally fine with convenience and cozy, but this felt like they were just like stumbling over answers in order to get to the next point. There was nothing felt earned. But that being said, you're just kind of following along. So these two characters, a dwarf and a shadow demon, can fall in love and, reach their dreams and their potentials. And whatever. It's fine. Absolutely fine. It's not my favorite in the series. I still think the second one, which was Brewed in Magic, I really liked that one a lot. But I'll continue reading in this series. I like cozy fantasy romance. You know, sometimes you just need the stakes to be a little bit on the low side. And the last book we're going to talk about, again, completely different, Cloud Cuckoo Land by Anthony Doerr. This was something that everyone in real life kept saying I would really like, but it's not something that I would naturally gravitate towards. The best way I can describe it is this would not be on a table in the bookstore that I would usually peruse. I would probably skip over this table. Not that there's anything wrong with that, and obviously I'm missing out on things that I would really enjoy. This is a multi-point of view story following several characters who exist in different points of time. Some of them as far back as I believe the 15th century. Yes, as far back as the 15th century. Some of them happening in somewhat present day, and then some happening in the not so distant future. You follow each character in its perspective timeline as they travel through their life as well. So not only are you in different points of time, but you're moving through time with these characters. And the glue that kind of starts to work them all together is this story. See, this is a story about stories. There is a story called Cloud Cuckoo Land that is ancient, even to the people living in the 15th century. And it is the story of a man who becomes a donkey, but he wants to be a bird so we can fly to these special lands full of clouds, the Cloud Cuckoo Land. It's a very silly story, the lore being that it was written by a man for his niece who was dying. So it does have that kind of childlike whimsy. A man who is not the smartest or the brightest, but he seems like a decent human going on a silly adventure. This story is pivotal. It's very important to all of these characters in their lives for very different ways. The best way I can describe it is that all of these characters are impacted by this story in some way, and then in turn, it propels them into some other important moment in their life. See, it helps them through hard times, but also sets them on the path to be the person they're supposed to be. This is a story about loving stories. This is a story about how stories are so impactful, how they travel through time, how something ancient can still resonate throughout ages. I mean, into the future, this ancient story still has an impact on this person that's on a spaceship traveling. It's a story that made me cry, a story that made me happy. It's masterfully done, it's beautifully done, and it's about the love of stories. It's gorgeous. And I can't really give you more than that because you just have to follow the author along with faith that all of these stories have a reason they're being told, and they do. And it's so incredibly satisfying when these threads start crossing, interweaving, when you start picking up the clues of why we're being told all of these different perspectives throughout time. I loved it. Obviously, everyone who read it and knew I would love it was right. Thanks, everybody. But that, kids, is where we are going to stop this recent reads, because that's plenty. It really is plenty. I am really far behind on these, in case you didn't know, but I feel like I always am. This is just a state of being. Very behind on trying to keep you up to date on what I've been reading. I hope you're reading good stuff out there, wherever you are. I'd love to hear about it. If you had fun hanging out with me and the dogs, please subscribe. And I'll see you next time.